Welcome to Wine by the Case.
Where we uncork legal insights one bottle at a time.
So, Chris, you've got a topic that you love being an old, well, you weren't old, but you
It's very
previously,
young.
and you
Very young.
previously in your younger days, you were a literature
Yes.
teacher.
Yes.
So what are we talking about today?
We are talking about book banning.
Uh,
Book banning. So, yes, again, back in the day, I graduated with a degree in English and humanities and a master of liberal arts before going to law school. So, book banning is something that really gets me. And I used to pass out the list of the top 10 banned books to my students because nothing makes a kid want to read more than being told they can't.
True.
It's true. It's like, okay. So, and some of them are really good books, but, you know, we live in the free state of Florida, as it like to call it, but we're not so free when it comes to access for our youth to books. So, Florida is number one in banning of books. Number one.
Well,
From
and I think we should back
libraries.
up for those that aren't in Florida so they have a better understanding. So, our children, basically, our children and schools and teachers have been banned from having certain books, even in the classroom. They can get in
Yes.
big trouble, losing their
Yes.
jobs, and
Yes.
as well as being forbid from having them on required lists. Now, there are some carve outs, like for instance, my daughters go to a charter school and they are reading the
Total carve
banned
out.
books.
Total carve
But,
out.
and obviously, if you're at a private school, this isn't going to apply. But it is a little disturbing because I don't have the band list in front of me. It's pretty extensive. But some of them are some classics. And what I found to be
Yeah.
interesting is that some of these were on the required list going back into the 60s, and they
Well,
were okay then.
right.
And they
Diary of Anne
weren't,
Frank.
yeah,
Diary of Anne Frank. I mean,
yeah.
yeah, and so here,
Mice and
yeah.
Men, I think is on
Um,
there.
I know why the caged
Outsiders,
bird sings. I mean,
yeah.
the
Beloved.
my God, I read that one in eighth grade.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, Kurt Vonnegut, who is just, I mean, Slaughterhouse Five, and there's just so many good works by him. And actually, back in the day, that Kurt Vonnegut used to get my teenage boys to read. They liked his stuff. So, in the world of Florida, for a second, we already don't have librarians in the schools. They didn't fund them. So most schools have a padlock on the door, and you have to get permission, and they have to come open the door. But in every school,
Well, some
private,
schools don't have a library. My
right,
kid's school does
right,
not have a library. The
right,
teachers actually have to staff their individual
right,
classrooms
yeah,
with books.
yeah. And so the ones that do have a library, though, they don't have a staff librarian. But
Mhm.
here's the thing: most people don't realize is that at the beginning of every year, you as a parent, you as a parent can say, I do not want my child to have access to the library because I do want to control what they're reading and bringing home. To me, that's okay. If you as a parent want to say, I don't want them to have unfettered access to a library, I'm concerned as to what their friends may encourage them to read or what they may want to read, that's fine. Then your child doesn't go to the library. But to say to the other 23 students, and you don't get to the library too because I don't want you to read Diary of Anne Frank, is where you get my First Amendment self and my former English teacher self up in arms. So here's the other thing I learned really this week. Hillsborough County, Florida, is second in the nation for the removal of books from the classroom.
Actually, that doesn't surprise me because isn't the Republican headquarters?
Oh, no, no, no,
Yeah.
that's Polk County.
Oh, the Republican headquarters is in Polk County.
No, no, but just as far as Sheriff Grady Judd, I mean, all
Oh,
that sort of thing. I mean, Hillsborough used to be purple, the I-4 corridor. But beyond politics, the fact that second in the nation for books like The Diary of Anne Frank, the one that everyone's up in arms about is, the one about the gay penguins adopting a orphan chick. That's the one that people are going absolutely apeshit about, to be honest.
well, the
Now,
whole thing is it's gone way too far, and I personally think that part of learning is learning about different people's perspective, and learning about that doesn't mean it's propaganda or somebody's trying to convert someone into a gay penguin.
Yeah,
It's
tango
just
makes three.
learning a different person. And I haven't read about the gay penguin, but now
I
I
read the
maybe I
little
will.
story. It's actually pretty sweet. But at the same time, I can understand if someone says, my second grader has lived a fairly sheltered life. I don't want them exposed to that without me being a part of it. That's again why you signed that little thing to the library. But to ban it for everyone is where I'm like, wait a second, don't I have rights too? It was interesting because when they were talking about defunding the librarian positions, one of the things that happened was several students came to the legislative hearings on that and said, I don't come from the world you all do. I come from a family that rides a bus. We don't have a car. I don't have a Barnes and Noble discount card. I have a library. And you locking that library means my opportunity to read Slaughterhouse-Five and other really great icons of literature is taken away because somebody else doesn't want me to have access to it, but my parents want me to have access to it, and I want to have access to it. And that's, to me, where the fight goes on, in that if there's already a mechanism in place, sign the form, your kid doesn't go to the library and doesn't read the book, why do the other 23 students in a classroom of 24 have to stop doing it? So
Well, I
with
mean,
that
that's
notion of,
that's the problem across the board with a lot of these restraints, that we're not saying that you have to do it, but the opportunity.
right,
Well, I mean, let's take abortion. It's not that people are advocating everybody should go have an abortion. We're saying that people should be able to have the decision and ability to make that decision. It's the same similar thing with the library, that, like what you're saying, that the books are available, your child, you can make the determination isn't
right.
ready, whatever, or it goes against your values, to enable them to to
Well,
want them to read that book. But that shouldn't be taken away from someone who has different values
right.
or different views about that particular piece of
And,
literature.
and the meetings regarding this, I mean, if they weren't real, you would think you were watching, television,
Hmm.
and not like reality television, Jerry Springer style. We are talking private schools even are having these meetings where people are screaming at headmasters and principals and saying, this book shouldn't be in our school.
Well, here's
And
the
then,
thing. Private school is a little different because
yeah,
obviously private school is going to be dictated by basically where the money's coming from to support that private
I
school.
get that.
But
But at a certain point,
yeah,
if you have the people who are affording $20,000 a year to send their
yeah.
kids to private school, you are not dealing with some of the less sophisticated folks who go, well, I don't understand that book, therefore I don't want my child to read it. So
Hmm.
we're dealing with a sort of shift in how people are viewing education, the accessibility of books,
Definitely.
and all of that. That's why I brought up the private school. In that, my answer to that is, see you tomorrow morning, 8:30. We'll unenroll your child. I have a
So,
wait list
well,
of students.
so Chris, to jump into it, because it's like you and I could talk about this topic forever.
Yeah.
But here, let's get into what has recently, we have the book bannings and now
Yeah.
there is a lawsuit. And before we get to that, do we want to get into, so we, as you can tell, are not in person. I'm actually in our Wine by the Case studio. Chris is at her
My home office.
gorgeous private office, which I think is actually prettier than our Wine by the Case studio. And can you get into, before you get into the case, can you tell us what you're going to be tasting today, which
I'm
I'm
tasting
so.
because when I saw this on the shelf, I had to do it because it's called Well Read.
And
So
I
we have
love the little A. Now, I'm going to tell you why I'm not so disappointed that I'm not there with you to try it, because she keeps doing this to me. It's driving me crazy. And what kind of wine is that?
wow, this is a natural, organic, no sulfite wine. So back to the
She's
not to
killing
be
me, people. She's trying to
but,
make me healthy and she's killing me here.
well, and again, honestly, I picked this one for the label. I didn't even notice that it had all the natural stuff at the bottom
She needs to
because
stop going to those wine shops. Okay,
well,
tell us how it is.
this is, I mean, the notion of being well read, that's something that my parents encourage, your parents encourage, most people I
Right.
know want their children to be well read. And of course, it's a red wine. So cheers. And
Ha!
I have my don't drink and fly and my Halloween thing. 'Cause to me, there's nothing scarier than censorship. You'd actually like this one.
Okay, you pick one
Yeah.
that I actually like.
Yeah, I mean it's not thin. It's got some nice. It's got a little bit of tobacco chocolate, little dirt to it. So honestly, I mean, if you tasted this without knowing it was a natural organic wine, you'd say that's a pretty good cab.
All right,
It's
well,
not
you're gonna have to
smoky.
save it for when you're in the studio next.
I mean, honestly, I'm kind of surprised because I
Oh.
mean, I'd give this a 7,
Wow.
and
All
it's
right.
not an
So let's
expensive
dive
wine.
into the court case while you drink the wine. I guess I should have dove into the court case while you drank the wine. But since I don't have any wine, you're going to have to dive quickly into this court case because we know as much as we love all the nitty gritties of the court
Mhm.
cases, I know people that aren't attorneys start to go, "Ah." So let's just break it down for them in
There,
like
there,
easy to
there,
understand what the heck
yeah.
is going on.
There's a couple of court cases going on, and the biggest ones have gotten the attention and involvement of the ACLU because they view this as a First Amendment.
So do we want to just quickly, because as attorneys we throw around, we're well versed in what the ACLU does in general, but maybe you can just quickly say what the ACLU
Sure,
their
sure.
whole mission is. Well,
The
not their
American,
whole mission, their
right?
short mission.
Yeah, the American Civil Liberties Union. I'm sure you've heard people say I'm a card-carrying member. They consider themselves the public watchdog for freedom and rights. So if and by the way, they're free. They're privately funded. So if you have somebody who's fighting an issue like book banning, censorship, being treated differently because you are of a certain race, ethnicity, things like that, they will jump into the case, put their lawyers behind it, and put their funds behind it.
And
So,
I just want to say quickly because sometimes people, especially nowadays, like make them out to be this quote unquote liberal organization. And I
mhm.
have to say that they are not, it's not a political thing. And there's many cases that they have taken where people have said, why did you take this? Because you are fighting for the rights of maybe what somebody may view as somebody that shouldn't have, like a Muslim
Mhm.
or or something like that. And it's not about a side. It's about that this was the rights, this is the Constitution, and whether that has been violated. It's
Well, and
not a
here,
political organization.
well, and again, that's people have all sorts of different opinions about them. But why we're very excited today to be talking about this issue, because of course, we are frustrated in Florida about the lack of access, and the wine's actually pretty good. Is that it was yesterday that the ACLU jumped into a lawsuit in South Carolina.
Okay,
On
but let's break down what the lawsuit is, Chris.
Okay, sure.
Let's tell the listeners what the lawsuit, what they jumped in and did.
They jumped in because they said that the books being banned, again, they're using the banned label instead of censored because it's better press. They
I
said
think
that
people understand it better too. I think they
yeah,
understand being banned from doing something opposed to a
yeah.
censorship
I mean,
because a censorship could be less than a being completely banned from it.
right, and plus, you think of the Fahrenheit 451 and
Right.
the book banning and the talks about this.
But let's
So
jump into it. Come
they
on.
jumped.
What does
They
the
jumped in because
lawsuit say?
a group of librarians had sued. Librarians saying they are the bastions of freedom to make sure people can have access to books and to learn. And they sued. And the ACLU jumped in and said, yeah, these 22 books that they have taken away from libraries and banned are part of sort of the literature canon, including, books by Maya Angelou, things like that. And they said it violates the students' constitutional rights. Interesting, because most of the time we don't think of students as having constitutional rights, because a lot of them you give up when you walk into the classroom door, and plus a lot of times they say you don't have the notion of the First Amendment outside of the
So
public
what
sphere.
constitutional right does the lawsuit say is being violated? The First Amendment?
Yep, they're saying it's the First Amendment as well as they said that I know this is going to sound strange, but they have a due process right because the books were banned and they didn't choose to ban them. This is
So
on librarians.
So due process to non-attorneys, this is another thing that we throw around as attorneys quite a bit. But due process to a non-lawyer is basically a process should be set up to more or less object to what is being imposed or taken away from you.
And that's
And
important
a
as
lot of
well.
times people hear about this in criminal cases and they don't understand that there are many other situations, such as employment law, since Chris is the employment whisperer, where due process does become an issue. So it is interesting that they are saying that is a due process, because due process is a fundamental
Right.
right that we
And there's
do
a
have, just
standard
like the
here.
First Amendment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they have a standard like everyone does for the saying a book should not be accessible.
Right.
You have to go before committee, you have to go before teachers, you have to go before, school board sort of thing.
Right.
They're saying no, no, and no. You didn't follow
Yeah.
your own process. Now, as we know, procedure will a lot of times win the day. And they have some good procedural arguments to make here. But I love the fact that there's just attention being given to that the school librarians, they're like, no, we're not going to sit back quietly and take this. This was done without following the procedure set forward by South Carolina. So, of course, I'm curious as to how, that procedure worked in Hillsborough County, too.
I'm wondering
Different
why,
every state.
yeah, I'm wondering why, maybe because they decided the courts were probably more advantageous in South Carolina. Because one of the things that the ACLU will look at, if you have across the board something happening where it's more advantageous to possibly file something over, meaning over one state over another.
This one, I
But
think
so,
it was because of the so many ways that the ACLU is alleging that the
right,
procedure was violated. So it's
right,
a little bit easier, instead of arguing about the value of the Diary of Anne Frank, to
right,
go, well, you only had 7 people.
right,
You only had, that sort of thing. So
yeah,
to me, it's an interesting one because, you got to pick your cases. And the ACLU does a pretty good job of trying to pick the winnable cases. But
right.
I just wonder, after that, since that happened yesterday, what's going to happen in Florida? Because seeing that, maybe it'll happen in Florida too.
Right.
But
All
in the
right. Well,
meantime,
so we are like running out of time on this topic. Like I said, we could make this a 2 hour, even possibly a 3 hour
absolutely.
thing, but we do like to keep our our episodes under 30 minutes, around 15 to 20 minutes, because we know you guys are busy. And Chris has said that the wine is a 7. Comment below. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. Please tell us topics that you want to hear. Tell us what you think about this topic. And
And before we end, tell us your favorite banned book. So there's lots
or
and
your
lots of
favorite
books out
book, and
there.
we'll tell you whether it's banned.
There's lots of books out there that are banned, but I mean the
Yeah.
fact that they have banned, Slaughterhouse Five. I'm just
I
like,
have never read that. I have
oh,
to tell you, I've never read that. Now I'm gonna have to
major,
go.
major.
I'm gonna have to go read it, because I do like to be naughty, and I love when people tell me I can't do stuff, because I'm
Exactly.
gonna usually do the exact opposite of that. But thank you for listening today, and cheers.
Cheers.